And Twitch is a gaming platform, mostly with gamers, mostly people, under the age of 35. But I found that it's been a lot of fun, and I've also learned how to play video games. And I told you guys that that was something I wanted to do because I just wanted to do something a little bit different. And so last night I was sitting on my Twitch channel, which by the way is twitch.tv/Dr. Boyce Watkins if you want to follow. And so I'm sitting there and I'm playing Xbox on Twitch, and a brother hits me up, well, it was actually a couple. One guy that hit me up, he goes by the name G Maculate on Xbox, and so G Maculate and I became friends, and he showed me how to play Call of Duty and all the little tactics and everything. And the guy's really good. He's like a killing machine, So he's in there, and they have this thing called Battle Royale where you're just out there and it's just a bunch of dudes, like 150 people dropped into a big gigantic war zone, and you form teams and they're all killing each other and all this, you're blowing people's heads off and trying not to get killed. And then there was another guy that saw me on Xbox, and he hit me up, and his screen name was Cat Pillar. Now that's how I knew he was probably over the age of 35, because I don't think a 20-year-old would have the name Cat Pillar. But all of y'all that are a little bit older, maybe if you're in your 40s, you know what it means to peel somebody's cap. So I instantly knew. I said, okay, Cap Pillar. All right, well then maybe you can join the team too, because you sound like somebody that might know a couple things, about being a studio gangster like we are on the video games. and and then there was another guy, Marcus the Great, and Marcus is a former Marine who enjoys playing video games and stuff like that. So Marcus the Great has sent me a friend request, and first of all, I want to say it's really cool, like meeting so many cool brothers. It's mostly brothers. I haven't met any sisters yet. Well, I think there was one who did send me an invitation, but Call of Duty is kind of a war game, lots of machine guns and killing and all that. So I haven't seen a lot of girls there, but I look forward to seeing, if there are any women gamers, like feel free to join us. But anyway, and my daughter actually plays with me, so it's not like it's some exclusively a male thing. But anyway, so last night I'm sitting there and I'm playing Call of Duty with Marcus the Great, Cap Pillar, and G Maculate, and my screen name was Dr. B, and we formed this team, and so we're in this big war zone with 150 other players and about 30 other teams, all from around the world, from China and New York and and South America and wherever, Africa, and and we won. We actually got first place. Like, we actually got, and it was really really fun. Mark. But here's the funny thing, right? So as we're playing in this game, we're talking about wealth and investing, and it was really interesting to. I talked to GMAC, who was talking about quitting his job, and I was explaining to him how to sell stock options so you could actually make enough money to quit your job, and that was really fun. And so while he's explaining to me, how to hold my sniper rifle the right way and how to make sure I know the difference between the light machine guns and the submachine guns and the weight and the the recoil and all these other things, right? So it was really really fun. And then I remember Marcus the Great was telling me about how he bought real estate, for his children. He bought an apartment, a couple of units of an apartment, or I think it was a condo or something like that. And he said, yeah, man, I gave it to my kids, and he gave it to his son. His son rents out the unit that he gave him and as an Airbnb. And I said, that's really awesome to hear that you passed on something to your kids that is going to reward them for life. I mean, you've literally passed on not just assets, but assets and cash flow. And besides me just sort of starting the day off by telling you guys about the weird stuff I've been experimenting with online, I find it really interesting, and and I'm super inspired when I'm hearing from so many of you around the country, around the world actually, that are doing things that are different from what your parents did. You're doing things at a different level. My gamer tag, by the way, my Xbox gamer tag is Bo Watkin, Bowatkin. If you want to look me up on Xbox, feel free. Bo Watkin, Bowatkin. And it's really fascinating to hear everybody's individual story. Like when you're hearing about those little transitions that so many of you are making. So many of you, I don't know, give me a yes, say something in the chat if you are a first generation investor. If your parents and grandparents maybe didn't do it, that kind of thing. But I'm super inspired by this. And the reason I'm inspired by it is because, as a person who teaches finance, who kind of knows all the financial theory and how habits and choices and psychology influence your wealth, I'm seeing something I probably see something a little bit bigger than what other people might see. Meaning, when you tell me, like, so when Jerry or Jennifer or Rico or Terrence, some of you that are here, David Noble, when you tell me that you're doing something different from what your parents did, I'm seeing a cycle being shifted. I'm literally seeing, it's almost like watching a rocket that's going, 10,000 miles an hour in one direction and then getting tilted in a completely different direction, and that rocket's going to go a long way. And after, a generation or two, that rocket's going to be so far off of the initial trajectory that it's going to be ridiculous. Where you are and who you are and where you came from matters a whole lot less than where you're going, right? Where you're going, what you're doing, the habits you're choosing, that matters so much more. What you're becoming matters much more than what you are or what you've been. And I want you to really understand that. That's really a mathematical concept. They talk about things like derivatives and the second derivative and all this other stuff. And all that really means is that if you think about a car, where that car is located or where that car has been is not nearly as important as knowing where that car is going, right? Because wherever that car is right now, if the car is driving 80 miles an hour, it's going to be in a completely different location 3 hours from now, 2 days from now, right? So you are that car. You've changed the direction of your whole family, not just your life. I mean, sure, a lot of you are making money, and I'm really happy about that. I think that's really great, but I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the fact that you are the ancestors. You are the ancestor who changed everything. A lot of you have ancestors in your family who where you look back and you say, "Oh yeah, when grandma started doing this, that changed everything." Or maybe it's something negative. Yeah, like, yeah, my father did this back in the 70s, and that this is how it affects us today. Well, you are the 70s. You are the ancestors. You are the grandparents, the great grandparents. So congratulations to you, and thank you for letting me get that somewhat long-winded story out. But I thought it was very important to share, not just because I'm truly excited and having so much fun, meeting the meeting the brothers online, everything else. And you can follow me on Twitch if you want to watch this play. I'm not that good. I'm getting better. GMAC was holding it down. GMAC was killing everybody. Marcus the Great came in. I have a lot of soldiers that follow me. And I love my soldiers because soldiers. My daddy was a soldier. He was in Vietnam, and soldiers are just great people to work with on things like this because Black people are on a mission. Like, we have an objective that we must accomplish, and the ability to stay on mission and to pursue the objective requires a certain degree of focus. It requires a certain degree of mental toughness. It requires proactive thinking. It requires planning and preparation. If you don't plan and prepare, then and then you try to go to battle and you haven't made a battle plan, you're going to lose. And so if you wonder why so many of our people end up losing, is because they go to battle without a battle plan, or they get attacked and then they say, "Oh, look at what they did to us." But did you prepare for the attack, or did you have your defenses up? And I relate to that line of thinking, because everything I ever did as a Black man in terms of education, everything with the fact that I studied extra hard to be the best student, and everything I've ever done in terms of investing, everything I've ever done in terms of trying to be an entrepreneur, it was always proactive. It was always built on the very basic idea that says, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So my whole life, one of the keys to my so-called success, if you want to call it that, is I just stayed ready, and I was always trying to get ready. And when times were good, I didn't kick back and, just smoke a bunch of blunts and drink some liquor and throw my money away and get with a couple of hookers and get hooked on dope. I didn't sit around and do nothing. I was planning for the attack because they're coming. They're coming. They're coming to get you, and they're coming to take from you. They're coming to exploit you. They're coming to try to outsmart you. And I think that it's important to understand that, so that when it actually happens, you'll spend less time being offended and spend more time learning from your mistake. right? So learning is really important. And let me just say this, let me jump into another discussion that we'll make, real quick on this. Is some of you were asking me before I answer the questions for the students that were submitted. I'm going to answer your submitted questions first. Those of you who don't know that, just log in at the blackstockmarketprogram.com and you can put your question in. I will answer your question first. We have class every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And I like to believe that these classes are transformative because, as you can tell, I grab from everywhere when it comes to learning about investing in the markets. The world, I see the world as a university. I don't see campuses as universities. I see the world as a university. There's knowledge everywhere. And so if you log in to the blackstockmarketprogram.com, go to the top, click that link. It shows where you can submit questions to me. And that's where you can submit your question. I will answer your question first. So some of you were asking about the stimulus check. How do I get started investing with my stimulus? Well, one of the things that I read in a recent study, which actually was, I wouldn't say disturbing, but it made me say, okay, Uncle Boyce needs to step in here a little bit and break some stuff down. Is I read that about 40% of the people that are receiving their stimulus checks plan to buy Bitcoin. Maybe they're not going to spend the whole stimulus check on Bitcoin, but some percentage of it. And I think that's fine. Bitcoin's cool. I told you guys, I think Bitcoin is headed to the moon, assuming the regulators don't get in the way. That's what you got to watch out for. You have a lot of regulators that they want to regulate. they don't want to see Bitcoin grow, right? So just be cautious about that. But Bitcoin, I think I like Bitcoin as an investment. I'm heavily invested in Bitcoin. But the thing about it is that Bitcoin is one of many, many investments you could make. And if you're not an investor yet, if you're just sort of jumping into the game, I think you want to be very careful about getting overly focused on just one type of asset. It's in a way, it's funny. It reminds me a little bit of last night when I was playing Call of Duty. GMAC gave me some advice, and GMAC told me, he said, when you're in a gunfight with a guy, don't get tunnel vision. Don't get tunnel vision on just fighting that one guy, because remember that there are other people in the area that might kill you while you're trying to take out this guy that you're fighting with. So I think that with investing, it's the same way. You have to see the whole playing field. Remember I told you guys that a lot of investing comes down to what I call OPP. That the OPP model, it doesn't stand for that other thing. It stands for opportunity, patience, and perspective. So I'm not going to focus on opportunity or patience right now. We've talked about that before. But perspective means you see the whole field. It means you see broad and you see long. You're thinking long term. You're thinking about all the assets that you have allocated all across the board. I'll give you an example. A week and a half ago, growth tech stocks, particularly those connected to SPACs, got body slammed because the 10-year treasury yield went up, which led to inflationary fears. And higher inflation, according to most asset valuation models, higher inflation leads to lower stock prices, particularly for growth stocks. So my growth stocks got hammered, like they were literally on fire. Well, what saved me with my growth stocks, the thing about a crash is that a crash is both an opportunity for some despair, but it's also an opportunity to really make money because you can now buy assets on at fire sale prices. So basically, when you have a decline like that, you're looking for cash for two reasons. One is either you're looking for cash to maybe cover a margin call. If you're borrowing on margin, if you're buying stock on margin and your stock valuations drop, you're going to be required to do a margin call, or you're going to be required to sell your assets at a discounted price. And nothing feels crappier than to have to quit the game while you're losing. Nothing feels crappier than to be a long-term investor where you have to sell your stock at the absolute worst possible moment, which is kind of what happens in a margin call. If you can't come up with the cash, then you must sell your stock. It kind of reminds me of how I felt when I played Call of Duty and I got my head blown off and then the game ended. It's like, no, I don't want to go out like that. I want to come back, right? Well, with investing, sometimes that's how you feel. Well, if you want to make a comeback, then they say, okay, well, you don't have to sell your stock, but you got to come up with cash. So the question becomes, where do you get that cash? Well, that's why you keep cash on the sidelines in case you see either a crisis or a buying opportunity, right? Because a crisis, Rahm Emanuel, the politician in Chicago that worked with Obama, I remember him once saying that you never let a good crisis go to waste or something like that. Well, that's kind of true in investing, to be honest with you. When there's a financial crisis and everything's cheap, well, that's an opportunity to buy things cheap. But first, you got to deal with the problem. The problem is that the asset you own just got hammered, and you may have to come up with cash to deal with that. But then after you finish playing defense, you can then play offense. Like Joseph Stalin, when Joseph Stalin was invaded by Hitler, Stalin and Hitler hated each other, but they signed a treaty, a non-aggression pact, where they agreed that Hitler would never attack Stalin. Stalin would never attack Hitler. Stalin said, look, I'll let you go and conquer all of Europe if you want. Just don't mess with us. You let us have half of Poland, we're good, right? Well, Hitler broke that contract, and Hitler decided, I want to go eat Russia too. So he attacked Russia. Well, Russia was shocked. They were scared to death. They were mad as hell that Hitler violated the contract. Stalin was very disappointed, and he had to kill 2 million troops to defend the country. But once he finished playing defense, he then played offense. And so after he finished defending Russia, he then pushed the Germans out and chased the Germans all the way back to Berlin, burning down every single thing on their entire path. And so, in a way, investing is similar, right? See, I'm sounding like my military friends. Maybe Marcus the Great rubbed off on me too much from Call of Duty. I have no idea, but what the hell? Let's just run with it. In investing, that's what it is. You start playing defense, right, with your portfolio. That's where the cash comes in. That's where, for making up for the margin calls or whatever happens. Then once you're secure, then you start playing offense. Then you start going to conquer new territory. Then you go in with the rest of the cash and you buy everything you possibly can if you believe in the long-term prospects of that investment. Well, where do you get that cash? Well, you get the cash either by having cash on the side that's just sitting there waiting, almost like guards, standing and protecting the fort in case something happens, or you have other assets that are non-correlated with your original investment. Right, that you have so I have my growth stock. Sure, my growth stocks got body slammed, but guess what? I had a bunch of blue chips over. I have what I call my blue chip portfolio that has all the stable companies in it. So my growth stocks were making the big money. The Tilrays and Workhorse and Workhorse got hit pretty hard actually, especially during that week where all the other stocks got hit. But Virgin Galactic, a few others. But then I have the more stable portfolio that's got, Apple and Walmart and Disney and all these strong companies that are never going to go away. And then also I have my crypto portfolio. I've got probably 20 different coins. By the way, drboycrypto.com. If you want to see the crypto I own, feel free to go to drboycrypto.com. It's all right there. And so long story short, what happened was the uncorrelated assets helped me to save and preserve and protect the correlated assets. Right. And this is a simple idea. It's basically like this. Like, what you don't want to do is be in a situation where the entire house burns down and all sections of the house burn down at the same time because you didn't think about the what ifs of your situation. I'll give you an example. In 9/11, if I'm not mistaken, when Rudy Giuliani went to respond to the 9/11 attacks and they had to form a base in order to, run their operations. Well, somehow they had decided in advance to put the base of operations right at the World Trade Center, if I'm not mistaken. So they couldn't actually set up the base because the base got blown up in the attack, which maybe a better decision might have been to put the base somewhere completely different so that you could go to a safe space after the attack and deal with the attack, right? But if the base is at the same location as the attack, then it's very difficult for you to operate because now you have two problems at once. And so I thought about that when I saw this story about this brother, and I'm actually going to try to share the screen. Give me a yes or no in the chat if you heard about the football player who got all of his salary in Bitcoin. Tell me if you heard about this guy. I'm gonna pull him up. His last name is Okung, and he plays for the Seattle Seahawks. Okay, it says he wants half his salary in Bitcoin. Is that half? Is that what it says? Let me see here. Yeah, former Seattle Seahawk Russell Okung put half his salary in Bitcoin. He's considered the highest paid player in the league right now. Right, so good for him. He's making a ton of money. So Okung, who I'm not here to criticize on any level, but he decided he wanted a big chunk of his salary in Bitcoin. And he was the first player in NFL history to be paid in Bitcoin. I'm going to try to pull his picture up so you guys can see it. And now the thing about Okung getting paid in Bitcoin, though, is that I think that was not a good idea. In from a certain perspective, it's a great idea in hindsight, right? It looks like a wonderful choice in hindsight, right? Because he's made all this money. He took a chance. It worked out. God bless him. I'm really happy for him and his family. But the thing about that, the reason I would have advised him against that is because Bitcoin is a highly unstable asset. Bitcoin is a dangerous asset in certain regards. It's a very dangerous investment because a lot of things can change. It's incredibly volatile. You guys didn't see the image. If you didn't see the image, that's okay. Just imagine big athletic brother. You have them everywhere. So if you didn't see the picture, don't worry about that. That's not the issue. And the issue is certainly not to make fun of his choice, but it's to sort of say to you that the reason that you diversify is because when the house burns down in one section of your portfolio, you don't want the whole house to burn down. The same way Okung made a ton of money from his Bitcoin gamble. There are other players like Clinton Portis who lost everything. Clinton Portis sat outside his investment advisor's office with a gun because he called his friend and said, "I'm gonna go kill this mother sucker because he just lost all my money." Right. So remember, risk is not a bad thing. Risk is not a good thing. Risk is just a thing. It's just a thing. Risk is something that can be wonderful. It's something that can be your worst nightmare. So you shouldn't run away from risk, but you shouldn't underplay risk. And a lot of times with investing, especially in a market like this that was super hot, people get to thinking that risk is a one-way street. So people that come along and say, "Hey, be careful, things can go bad," they're kind of seen as duds or what somebody might call a party pooper or whatever, right? Like, no, you're not being a party pooper. You're just being realistic. So just be thoughtful about that. So when the market crashes, remember this. So you play your defense, then you play your offense, because when the market crashes, that's a great opportunity. But sometimes you got to clean up the mess first. When I use cash to cover, to deal with margin calls or whatever, to not have to sell anything, I also then began to get that cash, not just from the cash I had sitting to the side, but also cash I had from selling assets in the other categories where it was safe. So I had the big fire happening in my growth stock portfolio, but everything was fine and green and wonderful in my blue chip stock portfolio. In fact, I had a lot of blue chips like Disney and others that have made a ton of money over the last few months. So I sold some of that to put that money toward the fire, to put the fire out. Right. That's why it's funny they call money liquidity, because that's what I visualize. I visualize your cash being like water that you use to put out a fire in case you have a problem. So with that said, I encourage everybody, as you think about what to do with your stimulus check, don't go put it all in Bitcoin, please. I'm not telling you what to do. This is not investment advice. This is educational purposes. But I'm just telling you, if you go put it all in one place, or you think that one stock is going to be the thing that changes your life, you're setting yourself up to be burned and disappointed. Now, if you know what it is and you're okay with that, like you can lose everything and still say, well, when you win some, you lose some, then by all means, do what you want to do. But a lot of times the market can be very deceptive and it can really put you to sleep. Okay. So the other piece with that is once you get your stimulus check, in addition to not putting it all in one place, I would also remember that your first goal, remember I was saying your first goal is to play defense and to secure yourself. But remember, you can't win championships just with defense alone. Right? Defense can, you can keep the other team from scoring. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers kept the Kansas City Chiefs from scoring, but the Chiefs did score 9 points, right? So if the Bucks had no offense at all, then they still could have lost that game, right? They could have lost 9-0, right? So defense will make the difference in winning a championship, but defense doesn't win it by itself. You need some offense. So when you're talking about investing, I would say to you, if you get the stimulus check and you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I make my move? How do I make my move? Well, first of all, make sure you're safe and secure. Make sure your necessities are paid for. Make sure you've got an emergency fund or some money to the side in case you run into a financial crisis. And then you can pull the lever on investing. Now, people have asked me, should I pay off all my debt before I invest? I don't agree with that. I don't do that. I have debt. I've had debt my entire life. Amazon has debt. If you look up Amazon.com, think about this. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world. Amazon makes $100 billion in a quarter. I think something close to that. So let me see here. How much debt does Amazon have? Let's see here. Amazon, according to the most recent balance sheet, they've got $33 billion in debt. 32.93 is long-term debt, and 155 million is short-term debt. So you might ask yourself, why in the world would Amazon, with all the money that they make, all the revenues they make, why would they keep debt on the books? Let me see here. How much revenue does? Let me see. You know what? Let me just look up Amazon stock. Okay, let me see here. I'm just get a whole quick little profile. Their market cap is 1.57 trillion. Let's see. Does it say anything about their debt? You know what? Let me see. Amazon revenue 2020. Amazon's 2020 revenues in the last quarter of 2020, Amazon generated approximately $125 billion in sales, which surpassed their record of $87 billion. So why would a company that's making $125 billion in sales have to take on any debt at all? Well, it's because the ability to use other people's money to make your own money is one of the most beautiful benefits of American capitalism. I'm not a fan of capitalism in all cases. I think capitalism creates a lot of very bad cultural norms like greed and growth. The desire for growth, the desire for constant growth creates greed. The need to be number one, the need to dominate your market. I think those are all very unhealthy Eurocentric concepts that create poverty and ultimately form various forms of slavery. But in terms of developing strong economic engines that all of us can learn from, the availability of debt is one of the things that actually makes the economy strong. If they were to outlaw debt, if they just said nobody can have any debt anywhere, no company, no nothing, then a lot of these companies wouldn't be able to move forward and take advantage of investment opportunities. So when you've got debt on your books, personal debt, maybe some student loan debt or mortgage debt, don't think that the right move is to always repay your debt. Like sometimes you might repay it just because you don't like to have a ton of debt, because remember, debt is also a form of risk. So there are times where I'll say, you know what, let me just go ahead and pay this car off. The interest rate ain't that high, but I don't want to have a car note. And you just feel good. Like Biggie rapped about not having ain't got no car note, no car payment, or something like that. I forgot, but he was rapping about having no car note. And I come from that culture, like where you brag about the fact that you ain't got a car note, but but it doesn't necessarily mean that was the right move, because there could have been a better investment you could have made with that money that could have generated a much higher return. So remember that every time you think that you're saving money in one hand, you got to look around. Again, perspective. Remember, we're talking about investors have good perspective. You got to see, like, okay, what am I giving up in the right hand? What is my opportunity cost? When I do something, like people will say all the time, they'll say, come on, doc, can you do this thing over here? It'll only take 10 minutes. It doesn't mean I don't want to do that thing. It doesn't mean I don't think it's a valuable thing. It just means that when I go do that thing over there, I'm not doing this thing over here. And so you have to sort of always remember that when you talk about, capital, access to capital, what you do with your capital. I don't think a person has to pay off all their debt before they start investing, especially when you talk about something as bloated and ridiculous and horribly, fiscally irresponsible for our country as student loan debt. I don't think, and I'm not blaming those who have student loan debt. I have it too. Everybody has it, or not everybody, but most of the people I know that went to college have student loan debt. It's just part of life. I'm talking about just the fact that this is overpriced commodity that we were tricked into paying for, that didn't give us what we wanted, where we would most of us would probably get a refund if we could, and this debt is sitting on your back. And so what happens is it creates a type of a sharecropping, where the whole idea behind sharecropping was not slavery technically, right? But it was slavery, right? In terms of the effect. If slavery is defined as me putting you in a position where you have to do what I tell you to do, or you can't do what you want to do, then I've succeeded, right? I just might call it something else, but mass incarceration is slavery, right? The reason student loans become a type of sharecropping is because you get this person that's like 25, 26, and again, because maybe your family didn't learn, family wealth principles, like the type of stuff we talked about in the Black Business School. Nobody left you an inheritance. Nobody was buying stock for you since you were a baby. Like a lot of you are doing that, though. You're doing the $5 a day investing plan, which is why your children will be out of the trap. They won't be in that trap anymore. But a lot of us were born in the trap in that regard. You're 25, 26 years old. You're struggling. You ain't got nobody helping you. You can't, you make the moves you want to make. You have all these dreams that are just pent up inside of you that you can't release because you're sort of trapped in this other world. And then you've got this massive amount of debt, like maybe it's $150,000. When I was at Syracuse University, when I taught there, I met a lot of black students that had $250,000 in debt when they left Syracuse. So you're sitting on all this crazy debt, and you literally are doing the math, and you're like, I won't have this debt repaid until I'm 60, if I ever repay it at all. So for somebody to come along and say, no, you should pay off all your student loans before you start your business, or you should pay off all your student loans before you start investing. Can I just please emphasize to you just how that is such an impossible, ridiculous, disgusting trade-off? That literally, because you're not trading money, you're trading your life. I mean, why would you want to sit around and shovel money back to people who really got it through unethical means anyway? You shouldn't be charging somebody $50,000 a year to go to college, right? That's the ultimate mind trick, right? I told you they don't give you reparations for slavery, but they give you preparations for slavery at an early age, preparations for slavery in all different methods. And so you're sharecropping. You're working this job that you don't like, so you can pay this debt back. You're putting your dreams on hold so that you can shovel money over to these people who really don't deserve it anyway. And then by the time you're, a senior citizen, your student loans are repaid, and now you can start really living. Don't do that. I'm not told. Well, sorry, scratch that. I shouldn't be. I'm told for legal reasons. I should always make sure this is not investing advice. Okay, fine. It's not investing advice. But what I'm saying to you is that I didn't do that. I was like, to hell with you and your debt. I'll deal with you later. I had a bad credit score for a while because I realized, wait a minute, credit is just a replacement for cash. If you have cash, do you really need the credit anyway? I didn't need it that much. I'm not saying credit doesn't matter. My credit score is fine. It's now 7 something. I don't know. It's somewhere around there. I don't even use it that much because I buy what I want, right? So what I'm saying to you is, you gotta sometimes the reason financial literacy is so valuable is because you can learn. You got to know how to pick and choose the pieces that work and the pieces that don't work. You got to be able to sort of custom make your own model of success based on your own specific circumstances. Even somebody who knows a ton about finance, like somebody like myself, I can't tell you exactly how to move and shake in your situation because I'm not you. You have different preferences from me. Maybe you don't care about debt. Maybe you're afraid of debt. Maybe you got a sibling who is constantly borrowing money. Maybe you have an opportunity I'm not aware of. Maybe you don't have any opportunities. Maybe you have anxieties that I can't describe, or maybe you have access to resources that, so the point of the matter is to say that it's a custom made thing. And so that's why I encourage you to consistently, and a lot of you come here and you listen and we just talk, and this is the way it's supposed to be. Learning economics should be about a conversation. It's not about sort of sitting there and just constantly reading these financial books and all sorts of. It's about developing a culture. It's like, how did you learn about God? Did you learn about God if you went to church? Did you learn about God by memorizing the Bible, or did you learn about God just by going to church, listening to the pastor, fellowshipping with other Christians or whatever your faith is, or Muslims, or whatever your faith happens to be, or if you're agnostic, I don't care. That stuff don't matter to me. But how do you learn? Well, you just learn by just being part of the culture. So be part of that culture of economic intelligence and financial literacy. And I can just tell you this too. When you get your kids ready, make sure stock as early as possible, maybe even as infants, or maybe you're buying stock for them as a newborn baby. Two, they should learn real estate by the time they're 10 or 12 years old, just at least knowing that you should own a home and not rent it. Three, they should learn entrepreneurship, the basics of starting a business, maybe the 5 steps of starting a business before they're 12 years old. And then at that point, you've equipped them with everything they need almost. The other thing you equip them with is you equip them with an endowment, which, if you think about it, right? Like I was on my Twitch channel last night and playing Call of Duty. When GMAC was explaining to me how to play Call of Duty, he was giving me a couple of things. He was giving me the strategy and the game. but he also showed me how to have the weapons so that once I learned the strategy in the game, I would have the weapons to execute the strategy. Right. So when you talk about educating your children, and actually this week I'm going to do a full lecture on this with an event that's being hosted by a group called Education Over Entertainment, and it's called Spring Into Wealth. And I should mention that to you guys. If you go to springintowealth.com, that's springintowealth.com. You can actually get a 20% discount if you use the code word or put in the code Dr. Watkins, all one word. Dr. Watkins is the code, and you get 20% off. And I'm going to do 2 lectures that day, each of them an hour and a half. It's their event. They invited me. I agreed to participate. I'm going to do a lecture on building a Black family bank and another on how to turn your child into a millionaire. So if you'd like to join the event, I don't have the brother's name in front of me. It's on my Instagram, which is the Real Voice Watkins. But if you go to springintowealth.com and put in the code word Dr. Watkins, you can actually join for 20% off. But the thing is with GMAC, when he was explaining to me how to play this game, he said, he gave me the strategy, but the strategy means nothing if you don't have the weapons. So with your children, love you, babe. With your children, you give them the strategy, you teach them the 3 pillars of wealth, like we talked about, stock investing, real estate investing, entrepreneurship, but then you got to give them the weapons. You got to give them the weapons. I've heard people say this, and I agree with them when they say it's hard to practice capitalism when you don't have capital, right? Now, the thing about it is that having capital doesn't mean that you have $25 million in the bank. Having capital could mean that you have $25,000 in the bank, right? Black people, we're brilliant. We can figure out, we got hustlers and, guys and women that can make $1 out of 15 cents. So maybe you don't have as much, but the first stage of capital, remember I told you, your first step toward accomplishing and conquering is to secure your position. You got to play defense before you start playing offense. So the first thing you must do to achieve power is you must have at least enough power to defend your freedom. Because the first thing you do, again, they don't give you reparations for slavery, but they give you preparations for slavery. So because they prepared you to be a slave, the first thing they do is they try to take your freedom. Am I lying or am I telling the truth? Tell me if you know what I'm talking about. When you get up in the morning and you have all this passion and all these things you want to accomplish, and you can't do any of those things because you got to go to work, somebody has taken your freedom from you. We're not even going to talk about psychological slavery, right? Somebody has taken your freedom from you. So the first step, and this is where that small amount of capital can solve this problem. The first step is you must defend and secure your position, right? And it's funny, I just keep thinking about last night. We were playing Call of Duty. Marcus the Great, the former Marine who played with us, who helped us beat all those guys. I was so excited. It was my first time winning. There's 150 players. These 4 brothers, we got first place. It was so much fun. And the first thing he kept talking about was defending your position. Find a position. Let's get in here. Let's make sure we cover all the exits and all the corners. Make sure nobody can come in here and take what we got. Right. So that first step, that first capital base you give your child, that first, 25, 30 grand, 100 grand, 50 grand, whatever you give to your child, because you say, hey, look, I know it's the year 2050, and now you're 30 years old. And I want you to know that since 2020, I've been listening to Dr. Watkins since you were 1, and I've been doing his $5 a day investing plan for you. And just like clockwork, after 30 years, you now have, well, let me make sure I do the math right. You now have $250,000, son. Here's $250,000, son or sweetheart. Here's $250,000 in your account that you have that gives you a capital base, which will allow you to secure your freedom. Now you ain't got to work for nobody unless you want to. Ain't no man gonna come in your life and tell you to sell him some coochie for $10, or a trip to Taco Bell, right? You're not in a situation where you're making desperate decisions because of small amounts of money. You're not a person who has a flat tire and can't make moves because you can't afford to get your tire fixed for another 3 weeks, right? You're in a position of security. Now, at that point, in addition to having the security and having that small capital base, and it might not be $250,000, maybe it's 100,000, maybe it's 50,000, whatever the number is, you ain't got to go to work now. So now that opens up the whole world for you. Now the whole offense is open for you to go out here and actually conquer some things. Now your daughter, instead of going to work every day and catering to what her boss wants her to do, she gets to sit at home all day and talk to her girlfriends about her passionate business idea and how she's going to get her fashion brand off the ground, right? And she's got the tools to work with and the skill set to know how to pursue that. You see, one of Alicia and I, Alicia's a professor like me, and we do nerdy things. Like we're gonna go to Comic-Con actually, and we watch Star Trek. We're big Trekkies. Some of y'all might be Trekkies in here. And I tend to attract weirdos like me. So if you're not in Star Trek, you should really watch it. Alicia watched it a lot, and I started watching it so we can spend time together. And I really love it. And Star Trek was like another experiment, just like Call of Duty is. Like I was doing something totally new that I never did. I did that with Star Trek, and I love it. Right. And one thing about Star Trek that was really interesting was we were there was this black couple on Star Trek Discovery, and it's a great love story. Like they're madly in love, and he loves this black woman, and she loves that black man, and we're just like, oh, look at that, that's black love on screen. That's great. And the interesting thing we were talking about though was I said, we were like, yeah, who are the black people that are writing stuff like this? Like Star Trek is such a great show, and it's so creative, and all these other things. And we thought about some of the people. There are black sci-fi writers that are really great. In fact, I met the sister who wrote The Matrix, actually. Sophia Stewart, I think that's her name. And I talked to Sophia for about 3 hours one day. It was one conversation for 3 hours. Very nice lady, very intelligent. She actually claimed that she modeled the Neo character after Muhammad Ali. And that meant something to me because, I'm from Louisville, like Ali, and I grew up hearing stories about him and stuff like that. He went to my grandmother's high school. But anyway, one of the things that I concluded was I said, I think part of the reason that we don't come up with really super creative, out of this world ideas as regularly as everyone else is because we're too busy focused on mundane shit. We're can you really sort of create an entire galaxy with alien species and this really elaborate story, that has no place in time, that's on, that's 25 light years away from Earth, if you're worried about trying to like pay the rent by Tuesday? Like if you try, can you really do these really expansive things? Can you write the Hunger Games or write, the Matrix, while you're focused on all these stupid little problems, like you're trying to get your sister off crack, or you're trying to, or you fighting with your spouse every day, or your little cousin just tried to kill you last week because he think you took his weed. Like can you solve big problems if you're really dealing with small problems? And I think a lot of times we're positioned where we're so busy, our minds are so occupied solving small problems that we can't solve the big problems. Like rapper T.I., poor guy. I hope that him and his wife worked that thing out. But he had a really great song where the chorus was, big things popping and little things stopping. And I do agree with that premise to a point, to say that you can't really do big things if your mind is occupied by little things. So in your life, one thing I would encourage you to do is, if you really want to be a big mover and accomplish big things, look around in your life and try to see if which little things are worth dealing with and which little things you got to like wipe off the plate. Like some little things you got to deal with. Like, if my 10-year-old comes in and says, I saw a ghost in my room, ain't no ghost in your room, girl. But she's 10 and that's my girl. So I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna go fight the ghost together. And it might take an hour to convince her that the ghost isn't gonna hurt her, right? That's fine. That's a little thing. You deal with those little things because they're important. But then there's some little things like stupid problems that some of your stupid relatives call you with in the middle of the night, or just dumb situations that your friends want to drag you into, or things that people want to do that will cause you to waste your time, that you need to get rid of, because what it's doing is it's killing your ability to climb to the top of the ladder of intellect, right? You can't climb to the top, to the tallest building of your possibility, if you're always spending your time in the basement. So get out of the basement so you can learn how to go to the executive suite and become that CEO of your life. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna I'm gonna answer some more questions now, and I know I went off on a whole different tangent, but I hope that this conversation we've had about sort of how you think about your wealth is helpful to you. And I'm going to answer specific technical questions now, so that those of you who also came for that will benefit from that as well. And if my little stories and stuff are too much, then just let me know, because I apologize. Y'all know I can't help it. I try my best to not be a weirdo. All right.